8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
International superstar, Miss Anna Fishbeyn.
You are now tuned in to Butter Bee Rocker on Transparency Talks Podcast.
Welcome to another episode of Transparency Talks Podcast. I am your girl, Butter Bee Rocker. We have an amazing show for you today. I'm super excited to have this young lady on with me. She is doing almost everything that I'm doing, and I'm like, oh my God, and she's doing it so good. So she is a filmmaker, an actress, an author, founder and president of XOFeminist Productions and Anteriya Films. We have Miss Anna Fishbeyn. How are you doing?
Good. How are you? It's so great to be here.
It is great to have you. I was just telling everybody, you're doing some amazing things, and you're doing some things that I just started in that I'm really going to pick your brain because you are awesome.
Thank you so much. You too. I'm so excited to be here, and I've been excited. I looked at your videos and you're dancing and you're singing and you're just an amazing stage presence. Amazing.
Thank you.
Loved it.
I appreciate it. So we're going to dive right on in. I like to go head on in. Yeah. So can you give everybody a little background about yourself?
So I've got this movie that I've been in the process of birthing into the world. It's called Galaxy 360, A Woman's Playground. And it's my first feature film, my first directorial debut. It is a comedy satire that takes place in the future in 2195. And it's where women rule the world. Men dream of getting married. And it takes place over a male beauty pageant. So it's got a lot of fun stuff. The pageant that is most popular during that time is called Victor's Angels Mr. World Beauty Pageant. And men come out in their bathing suits and, show their pecs. And we talk about their bodies a lot. So I just decided, to turn the world upside down a little bit.
I love it. I love it. So I'm going to get back onto that in a few minutes. But what I want to know right now is where you're from.
Oh, okay. To make a very, very long tale short. So I was born in Russia and I immigrated to America, and we came here as political refugees. We had a pretty tough road from Russia to America. I was a small child. And so I grew up, when we first got to America, none of us spoke a word of English. And my life as an outsider has always been true. Like, I've always been kind of the kid out who's watching the world around her and doesn't really fit in quite anywhere. And I do think that gives one the ability to create things and to kind of pool. If you are used to observing the world, you can actually do something creative about the world and make statements about what's happening out there, because you can watch it from kind of like suspended in the air. So I came here as an immigrant, and then I spent a long time doing very intellectual things, and thought that I would never be an actress or a performer or any of those things, because while I was a performer as a child in Russia, when we got here, we didn't speak a word of English, and my parents were absolutely terrified of me doing anything like that. And I majored in physics and statistics and computer science, and eventually got a PhD in philosophy of literature, and just did all kinds of very intellectual things. And I ended up writing a novel. And then after I had children, I finally got up on stage and began performing and said, oh my God, I've been missing out and I've come home. Like that my first performance was when both of my kids were small babies and I was still breastfeeding one, and my boob was like, my first show was called Conversations with My Breasts, and one of my boobs was leaking during the performance. So it was kind of apropos. But when people started laughing and they started coming up to me and they started saying, you're an actress, you're a comedian. And I thought, what? No, I'm an intellectual. I'm a writer. And then I just owned it eventually.
So Conversations with My Breast.
Oh yeah.
Is that something that you wrote?
Yeah.
Okay.
I wrote Conversations with My Breasts, Sex in Mommyville. All of my titles have been fun.
Yeah. Okay. So, all right.
Sex in Mommyville is about how you don't have sex as a mother. Conversations with My Breasts is when your breasts don't obey what you want them to do. And it's always kind of like the opposite,
Got you. Okay. So you grew up, you came to America and you got into acting. How did you get into acting?
So it's a very awesome, cool story, I always think, because I got into acting by diving into acting. Okay. Diving into acting without ever having taken a class in acting. So, I mean, I was always a natural ham, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. I was the person, I like to say I was the person who ruined people's weddings and bar mitzvahs. Right. I was the person who came and, picked up the microphone and got up on stage, and the bride was like, who's that person? We didn't hire her. She's not our proposed entertainer. What is she doing? Or like I would take over the dance floor and I would just, get down and I'd be in some dress and I'd be on the floor, doing the whatever. And, and people loved it and people were laughing at me. And people were like, oh my God, you're fun. You're this. It never sort of like occurred to me that once I would get on stage and then I'd go to a wedding, I wouldn't do anything. Like I would just be like, oh, I can relax now because I perform. I have a show like tomorrow. Right. Because you have to get it out of your system. If you're a natural performer, if you love the stage, if you never get nervous on stage, if you like I've had this before, like I was doing cabaret in New York in 2017. And before I was always so nervous and my stomach was all in knots and whatever. And then the audience would get there and I'd get up on stage and I'm like, hey, everybody, what's going on? If you are that person, that's where you should be.
Yeah.
But what I was going to say is the way that it happened is because I was writing and I wrote Conversations with My Breasts. And then I did a little video of Conversations with My Breasts, sent it out to a bunch of small theaters in New York. And then the Flea Theater said, you could have your own solo show. And at the time I started studying with a director, Sandy Shurin, and she kind of started helping me train to become an actress. And, we took some time. And then by the time that the Sex in Mommyville opened, I had already worked with her on my performing. And then after the show ran at the Flea Theater and numerous other, and La Mama Theater and a bunch of other places, then I started taking acting classes. And I started taking singing classes and acting classes and, and dancing classes. And I said, I'm going to do this. I'm going to dive in. I don't care if I have kids and I'm older than every other 20-year-old actress, what the heck, So I got into it, relatively late, and I've never regretted it. I think it's you just do what you do when you're ready.
Absolutely. And I like the fact that you said you dived in. It didn't matter what your age was. You just dived in and you went out to something that you love. That's always a great thing. I'm the exact same way. But I can tell you, I'm also a screenwriter, a playwright.
Yeah.
And I can say that it's totally different from coming from writing a novel, or I'm an author as well. So I definitely understand, but it's a big difference with writing a book or writing, for magazines and, different things than going into playwriting.
Yeah. Yeah.
Even from the dynamics of how you word it and, making sure that you have it where, this person is saying this, then you interrupt the person to say this. How did it feel trying to put all of that together? Because I can tell you, my first experience was eye-opening. I did it with a partner, And because I was already a writer, once I understood how you have to format it and all that type of stuff, it was cool. But it was like, it's a major difference.
Major. And I completely agree with you. It's like every single form of writing is a different like version of, I started writing short stories when I first started writing, and that was completely different than putting a novel together, which,
Right.
And my dream, before kids, I like to say kids really changed my life, but before kids, I dreamt of becoming like just an author. I saw myself as writing many, many books, and that, it would always be fiction, and it would be and I had this idea for a fiction novel and that idea, this idea. And then this interesting thing happened where I was writing this novel, and it was super intellectual. And I remember, people coming back to me with it. They were saying to me, like, it's hard to read this. I don't know how many people are going to want to read your novel. I mean, to this day, if anybody thinks it's my novel is a rom-com, not true. It's like a serious literature with big words, and I intended it to be that way. It's heartfelt and psychological. It's not a quick, easy, whatever. And then I was like, I want to do something stupid and funny and not intellectual, and I want people to get it right away. And I was just tired of like people going, well, what do you mean here? So I wrote Conversations with My Breasts, which had dialogue in it. And the reason I mentioned that is because when I decided, and it's a funny thing, I decided to do something simple. But by doing something simple, I allowed myself to interact with the audience. And I like to think of a screenplay and a play as an interactive process, right? A novel is something that goes for the person. The person is alone, and they're entering that world alone. But a screenplay and a play, which I really think they're very closely connected. You are thinking about how it's going to come out. You write a word, you write a sentence, you write a piece of dialogue, and then the actor speaks it. And depending on how they speak it, and depending on who the actor is, it changes. And the meaning of your play or your screenplay changes. And I thought, what an amazing level of complexity here. And how interesting it is that, we have to think about other people. So when I wrote my first play, after actors would read it, I would go back to the drawing board and rewrite it. And I've really done this with every project I've had. And for Galaxy 360, for instance, I had a screenplay, but after I heard every single actor perform, I went back and revised based on each person, based on the people I cast.
I understand that.
And you kind of tailor it. It's really like a team. And you as a writer, you have that person in front of you. It's such a cool feeling, because when you're writing a novel, it's either you or somebody you knew or whatever, but it's all coming from memory kind of thing. But here you've got the person, you've got that charisma, you've got that energy to deal with, and you're putting that dialogue into that person's mouth, and you know how it's going to come out because you already know that person.
Yep.
And that's amazing.
Yep.
And I believe in working with actors when you're working on either a play or a screenplay.
Absolutely. When I did my play, it was kind of the same way. Once I actually had the actors going over their lines and I got to know who the actors were, I would change up some stuff because now I'm seeing their personality. And of course you want it to feel like it's their own, especially when they are on stage doing, your film or your play.
Exactly.
It's something incredible to see it come to life. Now, what was that experience? Was your Conversations with Your Breasts a one person?
Yeah, it's interesting. The Conversations with My Breasts was my first solo show in New York. And I did it at Cornelia Street Cafe. It was just awesome and down to earth. And I had no expectations for myself. And those are the best moments. But Sex and Mommyville started out as a one-person show, but then I ballooned it into an 8-person play. And I was always interested in a group. I love doing solo shows and they're great, but doing things in a group is really amazing. And so then it went between being an 8-person play to sometimes I cut it down because of producers. I cut it down to a 5-person play because it was cheaper to produce the smaller. But we basically did the I can't remember anymore, but the 8-person play, the first time I went from like a solo show, me doing Sex and Mommyville, and me doing the man, and me doing the woman, and me pretending to have sex with myself on stage. You know what I mean? I mean, that was fun. I had to take a chair and say, Bruce, you're my husband, you know? I mean, it was ridiculous and funny in its own way. But then once I had a real man to play with, that was fun, and that was amazing to do on stage. And I was like, oh my God, you know, I can communicate with all these actors. And so when it was the 8-person play that prepared me for the next works that I did, like my Happy Hour Feminism web series, which was a fairly large cast, and then Galaxy 360 was my biggest cast, which was about 19 people.
Okay.
So, and then I love working with a big cast, you know, that's
my film was 32. My very first feature film that I just did, that's in post. 32. I was like, oh my God. And
I love that.
I don't even know, and that's technically not including all of the extras. So it was even more than that. So it was definitely, you know, different. I've never done a one person play or anything. My first experience writing my own play, I had 6 national recording artists. I had, of course, it was music related. You know, if I'm an artist, I'm throwing my own songs, and all of them were artists and my friends. So, you know, I threw in a lot of music, and I mean, everybody from the background to in between were musicians and singers of some sort. So I got to see, you know, it really manifest into its own thing. But I can definitely, it was definitely different having a whole team of people to have to work with, and even having to, you know, do the blocking, because I'm sure you did all of that. You handled everything.
Yeah. No, it's you know, for the plays, thankfully I had other directors other than me. Thank God. Because, you know, at that time I was just dipping my, you know, feet into, first of all, having 8 people on stage, and I was the playwright, and I was also in it. I wanted somebody to direct me very much. But then, and then for Happy Hour Feminism, I also had a different director. But then I started to kind of dip my feet into, I really loved directing. I just, once I did it with Invisible Alice, my first short film, I thought this is an amazing experience to be able to call the shots.
Yeah.
You know, and that for a woman, I always think is such an empowering moment.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know. I'm not sure if I should have did this. I'm not mad that I did it, but I don't know if it should have been the first thing as a first time writer of a feature film to write, direct, produce, star in. And I did that, and it was,
you did that. Yeah.
It was crying nights because it was a lot.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
It's a lot.
It's so rewarding.
It's still a lot. Like I still, you know, like I'm promoting it. I'm the producer. It's still a lot.
Yeah.
You know, I can't even believe that I understand. You know, I can't wait till other people are doing everything else. But I wouldn't trade it for a moment, because I learned what a journey, right?
Yes.
You learn everything.
Yes, you learn so much, especially my very first time, because I had an assistant director who did a really good job, but I did all of my own scheduling. When I say I did everything, you know, on the back end, but it was because I wanted to learn it. You know what I mean? So from the storyboard, I mean, everything I wanted to learn, because I believe that when you're going to talk about your business and your vision, you need to know what you're talking about. And I don't want nobody else trying to taint my vision and what I, you know, have in my head, especially as my first time coming out. I wanted to say, this is me, you know? So.
Oh yeah, exactly. No, it's so true. I also had that feeling. I want to say this is me, you know, and I have a social cause that I want to push forward, you know, so I want to talk about, I've wanted to talk about men and women since I started doing this, you know, like from Conversations to My Breasts to Sex and Mommyville to Happy Hour Feminism. I've wanted to talk about, you know, gender inequality, but just make fun of it. I wanted to have a good time. Let's see the men sweat about, their flab and their wrinkles and them not being young enough. And let's see what that looks like. And I just wanted to have fun with reversing the world. And because I also had that vision in my head, because I'm also interested in changing, the way society approaches women. Because of that, I really wanted to be in charge of making this film, because I wanted the message to stay on point, because the message is very specific and very clear.
Yes.
And, I really want to have an effect, and I want to build a movement around making a difference for women. I see all the time where we're constantly apologizing. Like, all we do is apologize. Look at how, like, we're constantly saying we're amazing leaders, and we can do all this. And oh my God, this woman is not apologizing for her weight. Isn't that amazing?
Mm-hmm.
Why are we I want to say, let's live in a world, let's imagine a world where that's not even upon us.
Mm-hmm.
Let's imagine a world where we're just accepted and we don't need to fight to be accepted.
Yeah.
Because we're constantly fighting to be accepted as we are, which I don't see the male gender doing.
Yeah. They don't have as much to prove.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Is that the reason why your production company's name is XOFeminist?
That's my first production company. So my first production company is a fun name. It's a fun title. It's called XOFeminist Productions, which stands for XO Hugs and Kisses, Feminist. And I wanted to reverse the concept of feminism, the way that people think that we're aggressive. I just wanted to hug you and kiss you and say, I'm a feminist.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, but yeah, and I think that that's a ridiculous view of feminists, that we're all aggressive and dark and hateful. I just don't think that's true.
Yeah.
I think that we're, as far as I'm concerned, I'm fighting for the basics, and I want to start a movement called Movement 360 that talks about uniting men and women and getting men to feel responsible for what's going on out there, not just viewing women fighting with each other on the sidelines. I want men to be part of the conversation. Let's get them to talk about this. So so that's why. So I started. So, and then my company Anteriya Films, I named after a star.
Nice.
The star Anteriya. So.
Okay, so I want to talk a little bit more about Galaxy 360, A Woman's Playground.
Yes.
Okay, I know you wrote it, directed it, you're starring in it. What was your motivation to write it?
As I was meant, the motivation has always been to basically change the world. It's a small motivation, tiny little motivation. But yes, I wanted to have an effect on the way that men and women view today's society, view Instagram, view Twitter, view everything, because of the way that we are constantly pressured as women. Right now there's for instance, a proliferation of apps that basically make women's faces disappear. And I think that while we talk about advances, we don't talk about the fact that we are actually regressing in some ways because of what's going on in terms of women's looks and the pressures on women's looks and the pressure to be perfect in pictures, and I wanted to create a world with Galaxy 360 where we completely reverse it. Oh yes, I forgot the most important motivation. Pageants, US pageants. I used to watch US pageants, and you would see girls come out in their bathing suits, and they would be represented as just states. You never knew their names. You knew their bodies. You knew their symmetry of their faces, and you didn't really know anything else. And the talents kind of were like the end thing, and they were just part of the judgment of the entire woman. And it was a big chunk on the body, big chunk on the evening dress. It was a little bit on the talent, and then there, and then like the peace, let there be peace questions, world peace, right?
Right.
And so I grew up watching that, and those pageants still happen, and they still matter. And I understand that women who are part of those pageants are getting amazing opportunities and scholarships and awards. And so I, in my imagination, in this other world in 2195, because men have no power, the only power is their looks. And the only power is this pageant. And if they win the pageant, they get some money, a little bit of money.
Right.
They get a few opportunities. And so that was one. Oh, and the other thing that I did in the movie is each of the men is a district. So the world is divided into districts, and their districts, they don't have any names. We never learn their names. We just have numbers.
I love the concept. And I have never seen a male beauty pageant, so I think that that's great.
Yes,
Great.
never, me neither. And
Yeah.
like, it's like the fact, and and also the other, I remember watching Victoria Secret's Angels 2-hour presentation where the women would just come out in their lingerie, and people would watch it, and then the women would be interviewed backstage, and they would talk about their lives, and then we'd see them practically naked. And I thought, how about we do that to the men? How fun would that be? So
I have a question for you. So you are a woman of many talents. You're creative just like me. You have a background in filmmaking, directing, playwriting. You're an author, you're an actress, you have kids. How do you juggle everything?
How do I juggle everything? I don't. I like to say I don't. I like to say that, it's exactly as hectic as it seems, as it would be, right? Because when I was filming, and when I have a screening event coming up for the film, it's crazy. And then I will have limited time, and then I'll have time to relax in between, where I will spend all my time with the kids. And then the kids know, like, mom's got a deadline. And if mom's got a deadline, my mom and my dad help me take care of my kids. And I have kind of like a village helping me. And that makes a big difference. But juggling everything is really, I will say this, it's really, really difficult, and at the same time, really, really necessary for a woman. And I say it with the utmost love for all women who, I believe all women juggle everything, and that we need to be part of the social fabric, and we need to be part of the world, and we need to be part of the political system, and we need to be part of the business world. And because we need to be part of it all, and because we're the ones who bear children, and because we are the ones who have the most responsibility for those kids, we need villages to help us. We need society and corporations to make sure that we can raise these kids and at the same time be part of the social, political, and economic fabric. And that is why we must, until that actually happens and is put into place, we must juggle everything.
Yeah, definitely. Okay.
Yeah.
So what is your creative process, and where do you tend to draw from when you are creating your projects?
Sometimes I regurgitate old projects. Like, I'll be on my computer. I was like, let's see what you wrote all the way back when you first had that first baby. Like, I have a file called, ideas for a novel. And since I've started, and I have a lot of different beginnings of novels, and sometimes those ideas end up becoming pilots and end up becoming new plays, or end up becoming new, because now I do film, and I do, and I want to create a TV series. I've basically taken some ideas that I used to have, but sometimes I have new ideas. And sometimes, all the time, I have new ideas. It's just a matter of, it's just a matter of giving yourself the discipline to work through it. It's about getting yourself there and telling yourself, okay, you've got this new plan, and you're going to finish this screenplay. Let's say it's a screenplay or a TV pilot, and you set for yourself a goal of what needs to be done. And then you start with your first concept, whatever that concept is. And then what I do is, in my creative process, I just write dialogue. You know, I just write a conversation. I say, okay, let's imagine this character. You've got your concept, you've got everything going on. I try not to describe too much. I just try to get people talking. Like, and I hear the conversations in my head. And once I hear the conversations in my head, I can start filling in the blanks. So I'll have like, episode 1 is this conversation taking place. Episode 2 is this conversation is taking place. And the same thing with the screenplay. I go by parts. And I just, and most importantly, I like to write the end and the beginning first.
Okay. That's okay. So I noticed with myself, I typically come up with at least the concept first, or the title. I mean, the title probably changes, but I have to have something to be able to draw from. And then I just start writing, and then sometimes I'll be like, okay, well, I'm actually gonna move this up here, and it's already, you know, down at the bottom. But I'm like, okay, I'm gonna move this up, and then I'm gonna talk about this stuff, and
So yes, so you've got a similar thing, but do you do conversations too? Do you start with, you know, talking about people talking, like, or do you do the concept first?
I have to come up with whatever my concept is going to be first, so that I can know, so that I can then know what I'm going to have my conversation start about, if that makes any sense. And that could also come from me being a songwriter and, you know, a singer. I come with, you know, okay, what am I feeling? What kind of topic am I going to be doing? And then I'll start writing whatever it is. And I draw from either my own experiences, or I'll draw from somebody else's experience, or something that I see, you know, somebody going through. I'll draw from those.
Oh, that's that's great. That's great. Yeah, no, for sure. The experiences of, like, I like to give that experience a year or two, and then I start writing about it. You know, like when it's not so fresh.
Yeah.
It's not still sort of happening, you know.
Yeah. What advice can you give other people that are starting in this industry on how to get their content out there? I mean, the first thing, of course, is to start, but a lot of people don't know from there, where do you go?
So I got my true start through film festivals. You know, I met everybody at film festivals, and I was able to connect with people that I met at film festivals, and it all began with happy hour feminism. And like, it's really important to build a crew and to go out there and find people who want to be part of your crew. And who want to work with you. And so I met cinematographers, I met editors, I met, you know, it depends on what people want to do. If they want to sell their screenplay, or they want to sell their concept, that's one path. You go to these events, you go to AFM, you go to the markets, the con film market, and you try to meet with people, and you try to sell your content. There are people that are looking for content, they're looking for screenplays. But the other way is you do everything yourself. You know, you raise the money yourself, or you make it on the cheap, or friends, you know, in the beginning, you do it very simply. And the web series I did, that was my first introduction into this world. And we ended up winning all these awards. And then afterwards, people want to work with you because everyone wants experience. And so I put that together. And once I put that together, Invisible Alice came very easily, because then I had people who wanted to work with me after Happy Hour Feminism. And so then you get your crew, you put together your crew, and then you send out your work to film festivals and see what happens, see if you get, and then you make more connections. And then eventually you've got products. You've got products that you can put out into the world, and you have experience. And then and I find that after I've done all this, if I have a screenplay, if I have a pilot, I have a different approach now than just being a writer, because I've been in the trenches. I know what the trenches look like. I know the mistakes you can make between, you know, being on set and editing process. I know that if you screw up sound, you could never undo it. You know, like you learn that. And once you learn that, you can never unlearn that. So there are things that I would say, my advice would be, try doing it yourself. Try being part of the crew. You know, even if you're the writer, even if you're the person who's working on this, try being a PA, try doing something on a film set, and it will get that person going, understanding the process of doing this.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So what were some of your struggles getting into this business and staying in this business? Because, you know, of course we see the success, we see the end game, and most people just see that and they're like, oh, but they don't realize the struggle
Oh yeah,
of
no,
the in between.
yeah. I'm not going to talk about that. You know, all the times you just want to give up, you know.
Yeah.
I will say this. I will say that um wanting to give up is the biggest struggle. Because it's very overwhelming and you're dealing with different personalities. And when you are dealing on a larger set and you have more people and you know exactly, I can feel you like not when you're dealing on a larger and you've got personalities that are clashing and you're not getting along with someone or someone is not or it's not even you and they're not getting along. No, it's tough and you've got to, you know, and you've got to be calm. I was always calm. And the struggle of being a woman in charge on set over and over again in my personal experience, I was not treated with, I had to fight, even if I called myself the director, I had to fight to get heard. I am not, you know, I'm a small person. And I'm, you know, and if I put on like a ponytail, it was even worse. It was very useful to wear heels and like to be all like sexed up to be listened to.
Right.
Not in a bad way, not because there was sexual harassment or anything like that, but because people actually paid attention when you had makeup on.
Yeah.
And there was a layer of confidence that came with that allowed me to be heard. So I used whatever was at my disposal as a woman to try to get heard and to try to get done what I needed to be done. And different sets meant different things. You know, and so, but it was a struggle. To say that it wasn't a struggle, you know, it was a struggle. Like I would say, I really want this. And then the men on set, it was always men who were the crew and they would, I don't know if that's such a good, I don't know if you know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Because I was like, I don't know. No, I don't agree with you. And I'd be like, well, I'm the one in charge.
Right.
I still don't agree with you. You know, and they weren't rude or anything, but I couldn't move them.
Right.
You know, I had to like, and then, you know, I found this really great, I always tell this to people. I always found this great. I'd always say to them, how about we try it like just for 1 second my way? And then if it doesn't work, we'll go back to your way. You know? And that was my sort of compromising, but I want to be able to be the kind of woman who says, we're going to do it my way. And that's it. You know, like I want to be there. And I also want to be the person, I was always the person who wanted to say, I want to listen to everybody's opinion. And I want to make sure I hear everybody. And I want to make sure because I'm new to this, you know, putting it all together, because I'm new to all this, I want to be very observant and very conscious of other people's thoughts about this. It can't just, I'm not going to be just me. I'm going to be respectful of everything. But at some point, and you know this because you've done it all yourself, at some point you get to a place where you're like, I want it exactly like this. I know why I want it exactly like this. I have a vision. It works with my vision. Why isn't anyone paying attention to that?
Yeah.
Right. And that's a struggle.
Yeah.
For sure, you know.
Yeah, it was definitely a struggle for me. You're new, so you want the guidance and and I even like when I did my play, I like to hear what the actors had to say because they might come up with a concept or something that does make sense and fits, you know, their character. So you want the advice, but at some point you got to put your foot down and say, okay, I hear everything, I'm taking it in, but this is actually what we're going to do. And sometimes it is hard to get that, you know, no, you're going to listen to me.
No, exactly. Even with a play, it's the same, right? Yeah. It's the same thing. Exactly. I had this, right. the plays are a great sort of, preparation for an even more complex undertaking with film, because with film, it wasn't just like with a play, you're dealing just with the actors, and so great, so pure, but with a set, you're dealing with a lot of it was the crew and the lighting and the presentation and making all of these different parts work together.
Yeah. How do you deal with the personalities?
You go right in. Well, you study them like you study your own children, and then you learn what toys they want to play with, and then you give them those toys, and you just pray to God that they give you a toy back.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's a lot of learning of how I remember on Galaxy 360 thinking about each person and what they needed and what they wanted. And I just hope that I was able to kind of make sure that they were okay. There were some actors who, the guys had to be in their bathing suits. It was uncomfortable. They had to do things that were uncomfortable. And I remember it. It was hours. And sometimes people, sometimes a guy or so would complain. And I understood that. I felt that in my soul. But because I was with them in the trenches and I had heels like this, I had like 7-inch heels and my toes were bleeding. And I remember one guy was complaining. Another guy said to him, "Look, her toes are bleeding, dude. She's with us."
Right.
That really helped me. But also there were some, they had to do performances in the movie, and some of the guys felt more confident and others felt less confident. And so we had to work with each person about their sort of, it was in a way like theater, like live theater. And you know this when you're making a movie and people are singing in your movie. It's not just a movie about people acting. It's also about people performing. And while they're performing for camera, they're also performing for the crew and each other and for you. And everybody knows what performance means, because performance is, I'm putting myself out there, and it's a kind of awesome thing, but it can be very daunting.
Yes.
And so I would try to, it was actually exactly like writing for each actor. It was thinking about how they feel, on set and what needs to be said to help them. So a lot of empathy, I think. I think women make amazing directors.
I do too.
We are raised to be empathetic and nurturing and caring, and I think that's part of what this is.
Yeah, definitely.
And people always say, I've read a lot about different directors. I've read a lot about, like, a director will have a vision and he wants to push that vision along and he tells every actor the vision or whatever. And then there are the other directors that are sort of like nurturing and caring, and it's not just about a vision, it's about like kind of like a communal that's more of my.
That was definitely more of my style.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. It could be the woman in me too. Yeah.
Yeah.
You brought that up. It probably was because of that, but yeah.
Exactly. Like, it's not like I think about it, and I also think in terms of like raising kids, it's also my philosophy. I like to hear their opinion and where they stand. I don't have a vision for what's perfect or what's right. It's kind of like, and some of the best moments in my filmmaking experience have been things where I let go. Like I had an idea coming in. I said, this is going to be this way. And then something happens because I've let go. I said, okay, let's see what you got up here. And sometimes amazing stuff would come out.
Yeah, I had to go with the flow a lot, in the film. I had one direction. It ended up twisting and turning and going in other directions, but they actually were good directions. So you do have to be open and not feel like you know it all, but be stern when you do come to a conclusion on how you want your piece to be.
Exactly. Yeah. It's like this fine line between where you're going and like how to give people a feeling of, it's also that they're also bringing themselves into it, and It's so interesting that you say that. Exactly. It's so important to have your own vision still in there,
Right.
because that's part of the, yeah, I had a really, I will say this about Galaxy 360. So because men have to imagine themselves powerless and women have to imagine themselves powerful, we had this really complicated, it was such a complicated thing to do. It doesn't seem so complicated to just reverse gender, but it really was, because we had to let go of everything that we think about men and women today. Imagine it in the future. Be used to the fact that men haven't had power for a long, long time. What would that look like?
Right.
Imagine. And so the women had to, walk around like they owned the world, because they do in this world. It was a really, and we would say, and the women harassed the men, and the women touched the men, and they had to be comfortable doing that. And I would have the female actresses going like, "Oh, I don't know, I'm not going to do, that's not, oh, I don't know if that's okay." And like, and I'd say like, this is what you are used to doing.
Right.
That's the world that we live in. And they would all be like, "Oh, right." Like, but it was uncomfortable for including myself. I had to overcome my own discomfort. And the guys had to, at the same time, pretend to enjoy our harassing of them.
They had to be submissive.
And they had to be submissive, and at the same time feel uncomfortable.
Yeah.
But express their discomfort. So it was like a very complex, process. And that was something I continuously, as my vision pushed along, like that was important I was reiterating that a lot, because it was the puzzle that all of us were struggling with. And it also told me a lot about our society. It also told me a lot about how far we yet have to go.
Yeah, definitely. So pandemic, of course, it affected everyone. I want to talk about how it positively affected your personal and professional life.
So I ended up basically learning. So I, talk about doing everything. I ended up learning Adobe Premiere, special effects, color coding,
Nice.
everything that you can imagine in editing, and ended up enhancing the original film with some really awesome special effects. And now when you see it, it's very colorful. It's very exciting. The original film that was very simplistic and shot in just sort of like a one space, screened at the Cannes Film Festival, at the Big Apple Film Festival. And it did very well, and people loved the topic. And when I saw it, I said, you know what? I want to make it better. But I would never have had that chance had it not been for the pandemic. I would have been, the movie would have been out back when, in 2019. But because of the pandemic,
Right.
I was like, you know what? I have the time to rework this and make this really awesome. And I've been really grateful for that period. And I screened in LA at a private screening, and it went really, really well. And it looked beautiful. And I was super excited.
That is amazing.
So the pandemic really.
So Galaxy 360, A Woman's Playground, it's already out.
No, it's not out. It's just, I'm just dipping my feet in. I dipped my feet in LA. I had a private screening in LA, and now I'm planning to bring it out for a public. I'm in the process of getting it out.
Okay.
But one of the things I'm planning on is a screening in New York and possibly London. I want to do live screenings very much, because I believe it's the kind of movie that is that does well with a live screening. Like, it had reactions, it had communal reactions, like women laughing at the same thing, men laughing at the same thing. And that was a really fun part of it. I mean, I was so pleased in LA when people came out and said, we're rolling with laughter, and it's so funny. We have nipple commercials for men, and butt commercials for men. And we've got it all there, like just fun commercials that advertise only to male looks. And I don't want to spoil any of it. I don't want to do any spoilers here. You'll have to see it.
I really do want to see this.
I really, really want you to see it. And so, if I'm in LA again and I do it, are you in LA?
I'm not, but I can fly. I fly all the time.
Oh, well, in New York, come fly to New York.
I love New York. I'm in Atlanta, but I love
you're
New
in
York.
Atlanta. I love, Atlanta. I need to go there. All the film stuff is now in Atlanta.
Yes.
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 Awesome.
Definitely. So
yeah, it's not out yet. And please, stay in touch with me, and I'm going to announce it's coming out soon. And I'll keep everybody posted. I am at www.galaxy360movie.com. And then my other website is annafishbeynofficial.com.
Okay.
And
well, I would like to thank you so much for being on Transparency Talks podcast. I truly enjoyed myself and I learned so much. I'm going to sign off with Facebook and YouTube and all the other digital platforms, and you stay on the call.
All right. Well, it was so, so lovely. Thank you so much. This was amazing, an amazing talk.
Thank
I had the best
you.
time. And I'm wishing you all the best of luck. You're amazing and so super talented, multi-talented. And I can't wait to see your work too.
Thank you so much. And with that, everybody, we are out of here.